Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the IoT for All podcast. I'm Ryan Chacon, and on today's episode, we have Frederick Warner, the head of strategic engagement at the United Nations, and also the executive producer at AI for Good. AI for Good is an organization that is focused on identifying practical applications of AI to advance the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and scale those solutions for global impact. We also have one of the founders of AI for Good, Neil Sahota, on the show with me as well. We're going to talk about what AI for Good is. We're going to talk about use cases that they are seeing kind of lead the way in the AI space that are having a global impact. We're also going to talk about how do we know kind of what is good, especially when it comes to AI. Lots of really interesting kind of topics related to that. So I think if you're really interested in learning more about AI and kind of understanding what's going on in the space at a very large, kind of more global level, this will be a great podcast to listen to. If you're listening to this on a podcast directory, we truly appreciate it if you would subscribe. And if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, as well as hit that bell icon so you get the latest episodes as soon as they're out. Other than that, on to the episode. Welcome, Fred and Neil, to the IoT for All podcast. Thank you both for being here this week.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. Excited for this conversation. Neil, I know you've been here before, so let me go ahead and pass over to Fred to give a quick introduction about himself and the company he's with, and then we'll have you reintroduce yourself to those who may not be as familiar.
Yeah, basically, I work for the ITU. For those of you who don't know what the ITU is, it's the United Nations Specialized Agency for Information and Communication Technologies. And we're also the organizers of AI for Good, the AI for Good Global Summit, which was launched in 2017 in partnership with 40 UN agencies and co-convened with Switzerland. So in a way, you could say I wear two hats. One would be my standards making hat in the ICT industry through ITU, but also the AI for Good hat, which ITU is organizing.
Just real quick, I'm one of the instigators of this AI wave that we're in, part of the IBM Watson team back in the day, but, do a lot of work with the UN, and actually one of the people that followed the full conversation and reception after one of the UN events, came up with the idea to actually do the AI for Good initiative with Fred and everybody else. So really excited they gave me the opportunity to be part of that.
And I guess that's a perfect segue into a question I think would be great to kick this off with is, what is AI for Good? What is that initiative all about? You mentioned kind of where it kind of came from in the conversation, but just give our audience some background to understand what exactly AI for Good is and all about.
Sure. I mean, AI for Good was basically created on the premise that we now have less than 10 years to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And AI holds great promise to advance many of those goals and targets. So if you're looking at anything from climate change to healthcare, to education for all, you have gender equity issues, or looking at more high-tech solutions like autonomous driving, or in the context of smart cities, and of course, partnerships. Virtually all SDGs and targets could be positively impacted by AI. Of course, having said that, we have to be vigilant that many of those targets could also be negatively impacted by AI. Of course, top of mind is job loss through automation, which when we kicked off the summit in 2017 seemed like a faraway thing that might happen. But I think now that AI has been kind of mainstreamed, if you will, I think that is kind of top of mind for everyone when you just see what ChatGPT can do. Generative AI tools and how I think almost everyone could imagine how that might impact their daily jobs. But going beyond that, also issues of bias in data sets, ethical issues when it comes to machines making decisions or autonomous systems, safety, security, privacy. And then also, the digital divide is AI has great potential to help developing countries, but also if we're not careful, it could, make the digital divide even bigger. So I think that's sort of the topics that are on the table. I would still say the good news is that more positive use cases come across our desk daily than negative use cases. And there's been some mappings that have been done on this. So the positive does outweigh the negative. But it's really interesting to see how we've gone from the kind of, the narrative of the first summit was really much around the hype of AI. And then it kind of matured a bit. And then was it good and when it's not good for? And then we had COVID, and then here we are now where it's literally a part of everyone's daily lives.
It's interesting to kind of follow the hype cycle with AI. And maybe, Neil, you can weigh in on this on your end, is just where are we kind of when you compare like hype to reality with a lot of this AI stuff that's out there in the world right now. Like we have, everybody has been focused on and talking about AI ever since, for at least more general public, since like ChatGPT came out and really caught attention. But there are a lot of things, Fred, that you just brought up that are very important for us to be thinking about and understanding as AI continues to progress. But what should people out there really be thinking about and focusing on are things that are more realistic now versus things that maybe are a little bit overhyped and not really irrelevant right this second?
Right. You're alluding to what I call the Huckleberry Finn problem. If you ever read the book, now Huckleberry Finn kind of does these ups and downs. He learns a bit, retracts a bit. And the same thing with AI. I remember back in the Watson days, the Jeopardy challenge, and we're like, whoa, this is amazing. And talking about going like healthcare, and I'm like advocating, let's do some patient intake. Let's help do some admin stuff for doctors and nurses. Let's start off small. And I remember IBM marketing going like, that's not sexy enough, let's go cure cancer. Oh, there's a lot of challenges a lot of different types of cancer. It's like, people are going to think that AI is going to go out, what's going to go out and cure cancer in 3 months? That's just not realistic, right? And I think we went through this major hype cycle, not just IBM, but a lot of other organizations came crashing down. And everyone's kind of struggling on what to do, what actually works, and kind of went through that, the trough of sorrow, like the startup cycle. And I think we keep doing that every time we see new technology. Same thing with ChatGPT. It went from 10,000 users to 100 million users in the span of a month. But they had people coming out like, oh, that's great. It's helping me write resumes and cover letters and helping me do some research, but it can't tell me what stocks to pick. And it's like, no one taught ChatGPT stock investing, AI can only do what we teach it. And I think that's the real thing until people actually realize some of these things that's important. And that alludes to what Fred's actually talking about. AI is like all technology, a tool. It's about how we use it. We use it to create or we use it to destroy. We're trying to do a lot of good things, AI for good, but we also focus on AI for bad because we have to think about the potential misuses of the technology. I think that's something that we also tend to overlook. As technologists, engineers, we're told we're trying to create the outcome X, right? Build a tool to do X. And so we're focusing on X, not thinking about can also be used to do Y and Z. And that's the shortcoming that we have right now. And that's one of the things we're trying to focus on with AI for good is let's think about the other uses and misuses that could happen.
Fred, let me ask you, kind of tacking on to what Niels is saying when it comes to that good question, like what is good? How do you all kind of think about that? Like, how do we know as people when it comes to different, even AI tools or just general things that AI is touching, what are the good applications versus what are the bad applications, or what are the good things that are going to come out of this versus the bad things that are come out of this, like you mentioned, job loss and so forth. How do you kind of know what is good whereas technology is moving so quickly?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. One of the things we try to do at AI for Good is bring as many different voices to the table as possible. So whether it's industry, academia, member states, NGOs, artists, or creatives, and there's no shortage of, let's say, positive type AI applications. But how do we know they work equally well on men or women? How do we know they work equally well on, children or the elderly, or persons with different skin colors, or persons with disabilities? Or would it even work in a country like in a low resource setting where basic things like electricity, water supply are actually real problems? And, these are not things that occur naturally to the fast moving tech industry and to startups. It's more like build it and we'll fix it after, right? But these are things that we think about deeply at AI for Good because they really need to be addressed and solved if you're going to scale AI for Good globally. And I often say in meetings when I'm asked a question, how do we know what's good? I think, you, Neil, and myself, we could spend all day trying to debate and argue what is good. Well, what's good for me might not be good for you. Different countries, different communities have different priorities. But the good thing is we have the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is basically a framework for at least deciding what is good, agreed upon by all member states, and, organized around 17 goals and supporting targets. And that acts as a kind of lighthouse. So at least whenever there's a project or a meeting or something needs to be decided, we're not always going back to the drawing board and thinking, gosh, what is good? So I like to think as the SDGs as what is good. And as long as you use that as a framework for everything, you got to do, whether it's investing or decision making or research, that's a pretty good starting point. It's not going to solve everything, but it does get everyone on the same page and does save a lot of time with all these discussions.
Yeah, I think it's interesting talking about how you're bringing lots of different minds to the table to discuss and understand different perspectives to start to build a criteria to what determines something to be good. And I think that's kind of something that I imagine would evolve over time as society changes and people change and the technology evolves. It seems to be a pretty big undertaking in doing so, but definitely an important one because we had people on the show before. We talk about biases in AI and how AI can be used for negative things, right? And then you mentioned job loss, which to some people, the businesses potentially who might be saving money, becoming more efficient, might not think about it in terms of job loss, more thinking about it as the organization is getting more efficient. But then the other perspective is a person losing their job potentially. That is, potentially is the negative side, right? So, Neil, how do you kind of think about that same dilemma when it's something could be good or bad for different people or different stakeholders within the same situation?
I mean, it's a juggling act. I mean, that's the honest truth of all this. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. I think that's one of the big expectation issues we have with technology. We expect AI to be perfect. We expect it to help everybody. Some of these things are unfortunately not possible. But what we have seen is there's enough common good that can shift the needle. One of the things we've learned with the Innovation Factory, as far as with AI for Good, is that local problems have global solutions. So you have some of these social impact entrepreneurs like in Malawi or South Korea or wherever, like we're trying to help, people that are audibly impaired or deaf, or we're trying to help people that are trying to upskill to get better jobs. And it's like, these are actually issues that exist everywhere. And so if they can solve for the local community, that's something that could potentially be extendable to every community. It's not going to help everybody, but it can help a lot of people.
For sure. And Fred, how do you all approach kind of that, having that global impact? How is one organization able to scale globally to impact different areas that Neil's mentioning right here? Like he's talking about different areas of the world have different needs, have different things going on. What do you all do, or I guess what are some of potentially the things that you're working to overcome in order to have more of a global impact with any kind of good initiative that is connected to all this?
Yeah. So one of our catchphrases is that we're action oriented and we're more than just a talk shop. I think a lot of people might think of AI for Good as an event, as a summit, but it's actually an all year, always online platform. We do something in the order of 150 online events per year, in addition to a physical summit. But more importantly, supporting that, we have a number of concrete activities, which I believe are steps that can either help with the building blocks of scaling AI for Good or getting rid of the bottlenecks that are preventing AI for Good scaling globally. So, for example, we have what we call focus groups. These are basically pre-standardization efforts. We have a number of focus groups, quite often in partnership with other UN agencies. So, for example, AI for Health with WHO, AI for Natural Disaster Management with WMO and UNEP, AI Digital Agriculture with FAO. We do work on autonomous driving, 5G networks, environmental efficiency. And if you look at, even though these are different topics, what they're working on is quite similar. So they'll be looking at, what's the standardization landscape look like? What are the gaps? What kind of frameworks are needed? What kind of best practices? We need benchmarking to be able to compare apples with apples. Trying to solve things like data sharing, for example. How can you share data at scale in a way that respects privacy but is still useful? And all these things are things that need to be solved before you have that scale that we're talking about. And more importantly, within those discussions, it's what I explained before, is, things that don't naturally occur to the tech industry. So it does a solution that's just going to work in 54 African countries with all the political, social, economical, environmental challenges that poses. Does it work in across the world in different languages? What about persons with disabilities? So these are all the things that are being worked on in these initiatives. So that's more of a standards angle, but also something Neil's involved with is our innovation factory. So that's a year-long AI startup pitching competition. So basically, any AI startup that has AI that can advance the SDGs is eligible to compete. And these are actual solutions, right? They're products. They're things that exist here and today, not in five years, that you can use. So actually teasing out and identifying those solutions is very important as well in terms of the needle. And last but not least, we run machine learning challenges, and that's basically trying to crowdsource solutions to problems that don't yet exist, right? From the crowd. Basically trying to solve machine learning puzzles, whether it's in 5G networks or analyzing satellite imagery or tiny ML. So all these things combined, standards, real solutions that exist with startups, but also sourcing from the crowd. That's what I call the action arm of AI for Good, if you will.
With the pitch stuff, pitch competitions and different initiatives that you see coming across your plate, are there any kind of trends or things that you're noticing as far as like what are the main applications that are here today when it comes to AI that companies are really excited about, as opposed to maybe the stuff that's 3-5 years kind of down the road that maybe gets a lot of attention in the media, but isn't really here and now?
Well, they're not focused on I call it the sexy story. It's actually focused on solving the immediate pain points. So making sure they have access to clean drinking water, the ability to improve crop yields. I mean, I know it sounds like basic stuff, but these are things that change the way of life for these communities with a direct impact. And let's be honest. I mean, again, like I said, local problems have global solutions. I mean, who wouldn't want to be able to improve crop yields? I mean, we know we have the ability to grow enough food for everybody. We just haven't gotten there. And, Fred alluded to a lot of things about different communities that get impacted positively, negatively, and the important diversity of thought, perspective. We also have to understand the infrastructure challenges, that we can't just build like all these great super tools, but they require 5G and supercomputers to use. You have to think about what's going to be good for the general population. What could farmers in Bangladesh use, where they have access to?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's something we talk about with kind of the power of IoT and AI coming together. IoT is able to collect data for different things like improving crop yield and solving more problems that around the globe in different environments as IoT continues to progress forward. And then that data now can be put into AI models and AI tools to become more useful and to provide better results. So the marrying of kind of those two technologies is something we talk a lot about on here. And it's something that I think a lot of people are really understanding how IoT and AI play together, and they don't have to be always thought of as independent kind of areas of technology or solutions.
Yeah, Ryan, you make a good point there. Most of the high potential solutions I've seen are rarely one thing. It's usually AI in combination with IoT, maybe in combination with satellite imagery, in combination with big data, if you will, and also tiny ML, so tiny microprocessors which can pick up sound and heat and all types of things. And we've had some interesting challenges where, for example, there are more weather stations in Germany than all of Africa. And how can you basically tell the weather there? So instead of building giant weather stations all across Africa, you can use these tiny ML devices that can just analyze the sound of rainfall and collect that over different communities and areas. And then, put that sort of in the cloud, if you will, for analysis using AI. And, that's like a perfect example of sort of IoT combined with AI and big data and cloud and analyzing sound and temperature and different things. So we have a tiny ML challenge, which will be featured at the summit as well. And some really interesting use cases on how you can use these tiny devices for really impactful things.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very exciting to kind of see what people are doing with all these technologies and how they're applying them to what stuff you're mentioning, Neil, with more of these local problems that people around the world are having. What are some of the challenges you all are seeing? We've talked a lot about kind of different solutions that are out there and different kind of focuses and talking about the good side, but What about challenges that you feel like the industry right now is facing that are important for people that are listening to this to understand? Like that will influence the adoption of these technologies, that will influence the progress of these technologies. Like, well, what are some of those that stick out to either of you?
Yeah, I'd say for me, very easy answer. It's data. Uh, Either lack of data, or if you have data, you're not able to share it in a meaningful way. And I see it time and time again. We're in meetings and, someone will ask a question, who here has data? There might be a city or a hospital or a company. All the hands go up. And then who's willing to share data? Everyone looks at their shoes and the room goes quiet. So finding ways to share data in a way that's useful and meaningful, but also respecting privacy is a huge challenge. And there are techniques for that. So for example, techniques like homomorphic encryption, where, for example, let's say there's some app or Google could tell how long I'm going to live based on my bio data. I could send complete nonsense data. Like I'm 10 feet tall, 2 years old. I have purple eyes and weigh 500 kilos. And they get those numbers, which mean nothing, but they could still manipulate the numbers to give the correct answer back to me, which gives a meaningful result. So there are ways to exchange data, which don't reveal the actual data. So you respect privacy, but you can still manipulate calculations on that. That's just one of many privacy preserving techniques. And some of them, are quite well known, but they need to achieve scale, and they need to, really facilitate that kind of data sharing. And also there's a trust issue behind that. And of course, the other issue is lack of data. So if you're in developing countries, in order for data, you need to have digitization. For digitization, you need connectivity. And then that's what Neil was saying, really back to the basics. If you don't have that basic infrastructure, there's no data to play with to begin with.
100% data infrastructure, the biggest challenges, but we're also, seeing, thanks to the UN, like their global connectivity initiatives with your things, we're starting to solve some of those issues. We're seeing two other issues that are kind of intertwined arise. One, ironically, is, people are trying to figure out what should I be doing. And you have a lot of organizations trained to their technologists, and they're smart people, but they often don't understand the domains well enough to understand the pain points and where, these capabilities could be applied to. So the most successful AI solutions I've seen didn't start with a smart technologist. They actually started with a doctor or a lawyer or a marketer. And then the second piece that's kind of intertwined with that is we're really starting to experience what we call the interoperability issue. So when it comes to AI, there's the interpretability issue and the interpretability issue. Interpretability issue is, the AI is coming up with some recommendations or generating something, and the business people don't quite understand where that came from. But, the technologist can at least kind of trace that through. But the interoperability issue is where the technologists don't understand how the AI arrived at that conclusion at all. And so you have, and part of the reason for that is you have a lot of technologists working on things they don't fully understand anymore. They may not understand the domain. And as a result, may not understand how the neural networks are actually getting wired.
I think with anything new, or growth, with new growth, like we're seeing in AI, these challenges are going to be kind of rise to the top pretty fast. And we're realizing that in not just the AI space, but also the IoT space, as people are deploying new solutions in different environments, the evolution of the technology is causing potential challenges. The networks are not present, the infrastructure is not there. Things are not interoperable like you're talking about as well. So it's interesting to kind of dive into that side. Like we could spend tons of time talking about how great a lot of these technologies are and what they're doing and how exciting this is. But, if we don't focus on the challenges, then those projections that we have and that excitement we have may be tougher to realize because we're not focusing the time to solve these challenges, which I know you all are very much focused on spotlighting, bringing to the surface, and finding ways to get solutions built in order to help these good initiatives move forward.
Fred's going to laugh at me for saying this. Everyone hopes this stuff just kind of works like magic and it's all perfect. We all know that never happens.
I think you look back in history, I don't know if we've had a time that new things come out that we all get excited about and they just work. Like there's always challenges, but having people dedicated to coming together, sharing their ideas, working on fixing these challenges is the way we progress forward.
100%. I think that's one of the great things with the whole AI for Good initiative is that we really built this kind of ecosystem, this community of people that want to get together and kind of move the needle on the SDGs.
So Fred, let me ask you from your perspective, with all the conversations that I know you have and the people you meet, what are you most excited about, or what do you think some of the big things we should be on the lookout for from kind of just the AI world over the coming months, beyond the summit, obviously, and just throughout the rest of the year? Are there things that you're kind of keeping your eye on?
We have this summit coming up in just 5 weeks' time. And even though we're 5 years into AI for Good, in a way, it's the first summit, because if you go back to 2017, the things we're discussing there were kind of preparing for the future. It was just, what's hype, what's not hype, what's the fear, what's the promise, what's AI good for, what's it not good for? How can we shape a responsible narrative, sort of help move things along? And I'm kind of glad we did that, because I don't think anyone would have imagined being where we are today happening so quickly. I think people imagined it was sometime in the future, but there's just been this acceleration of where, even in the AI for Good team, it's sort of our job to stay up to speed on things, but you could kind of go at a pace of maybe 1 year at a time. And then it got a little faster, every 6 months. And now it's literally week by week. I mean, that's, if you miss a week of development, so you're already kind of like a bit, I don't want to say outdated, but that's how how fast things are moving. And so it's going to be interesting at the upcoming summit is, on the one hand, there's more potential than ever for AI for Good. I mean, you have companies like DeepMind coming, with like breakthroughs on protein folding, which could, help with like drug discovery for, very tough problems like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or all types of diseases that we just haven't made a lot of progress on, or even energy when it comes, like, for example, stabilizing fusion, for example. So these are things that could really affect the future of mankind in a significant way. And then, of course, you have what's top of mind for everyone, which is generative AI, how fast it's moving, what kind of guardrails do we need. So if you, maybe to use an analogy, if you go back to the dot-com boom, right? And before the dot-com boom, if you would have had 5 years of really productive discussions, maybe when the dot-com boom would have happened, the internet would have been designed in a more mindful way, right? In terms of privacy, security, maybe even the business models of things like online bullying, and that leads into sort of the advent of social media. But things kind of took off, for better or for worse. Here we are. But I'm sure if we could have turned back the clock, we would have been asking some pretty difficult questions. And I'm just glad that we have spent about 5 years asking those difficult questions. Not that they're going to solve everything, but now that we've actually reached this moment in time, there's a whole community of people, tens of thousands of people, thinking about ethics, thinking about privacy, safety, bias in data sets, how do we, manage all of this, governance frameworks. And I think this summit in July is really going to be critical, because you're going to have both sides of the coin, really. So how do you imagine the future for AI? What kind of guardrails? And then at the same time, I don't want them to forget the good part, because at the same time, if you're solving things like protein folding and all these amazing scientific discoveries, I feel that's kind of like people have lost sight of that temporarily, I think. So hopefully we come out of that with some kind of balance moving forward. But yeah, I think July is really going to be critical.
What do you all think, or what do you all say to people who are, trying to follow along with the developments in the AI space, but have real concerns, hesitations, or are maybe even scared of how fast things are moving? How is that kind of addressed in conversations that you've been a part of, or how should people be thinking about that? Because obviously there's good things about moving fast, but then there are obviously our hesitations, concerns, and negative things about moving fast at times. So how is that kind of thought about?
Well, Ryan, it's an interesting question, right? Because the pace of change has just gotten faster decade over decade. And it's not just AI. And we're just reaching a point now where the level of the impact from these changes can be huge. And I think what we've learned, and we talk a lot about in AI for Good, is you can't hit the pause button. You can't hit the stop button. You got to get every country, every company, every individual to agree to that. And It's just not realistic. It's got to be kind of a mindset. Every time there's a change, it's not to change just the technology and some of these tools that come out. We have to kind of adapt the way we learn our processes, these types of things, to take advantage of these opportunities and try to minimize the negative impacts. It's just that pace of change is so fast. Mindset differentials become so fast. I hate to say it this way. Historically, as human beings, we've been very reactive. Something happens, we have time to try to figure it out, take corrective action, prevent this stuff from happening before. That doesn't work anymore. We reach this inflection point, and we're talking about this, as part of this AI for Good community, that the proactive thinking, the anticipation of the different scenarios, about the different uses, misuses, has become critical. When you talk about AI ethics, you can't do that without having this component to it. That's just a major cultural shift. I can't remember if it was Peter Drucker or somebody else that said it, that culture always eats strategy, right? And you see a lot of people always focus, well, we have to have the perfect strategy around AI. That's not going to get you there. You got to start developing the culture, developing the mindset with people. So not just ethical use, but the ability to be proactive thinkers about what could happen. And until we kind of make that shift, we're going to have these struggles.
Yeah, I think like Neil says, it's behind every technology, you could call it development, right? There's always an opportunity and challenge. But what really needs to be solved is the people issue, right? The culture. And I like to think of it as if AI is forcing us to think about what it means to be human more and more, that's probably not a bad thing. And you see that over and over again, where even if you're trying AI yourself, or let's say you're developing an AI product or a solution, you're faced with all these questions along the way, which is basically oh, what would I do as a human now? And you have to have the answer and to move forward on that. And not everyone has the same answer, but it does force you to almost look in a mirror and reflect and think about what it means to be human. So the exercise in itself might have value, or maybe we've been not reflecting on that as deeply, and now we're sort of forced to. And that's really interesting, because you just see people really thinking deeply about what it means to be human, because they're faced with these technological puzzles that need to be solved and have been presented themselves by AI now.
Last thing I want to ask you, Fred, before I let you go here is, we talked about the summit a bunch, in and out of some of these questions and topics we've been discussing. But just to kind of round things out, what can people expect from this upcoming summit? How can they either be involved? How can they follow along? What's the best way to do that? And just kind of give us some things to look out for.
I think what they can expect is really both sides of the coin, right? You have what's really the hot topic right now of generative AI and how to manage that in the future. And we have some of the leading minds on that coming. So, for example, Professor Stuart Russell, Yuval Harari, Ray Kurzweil, you have ethicists, philosophers, really people who are in the nitty-gritty of all those discussions. And then on the flip side of that, you have all these amazing solutions that are going to be presented by DeepMind and AWS and Microsoft and startups. And those are really the AI for good positive use cases. Something that people might not expect that's happening at the summit is the robots. So during COVID, we launched a Robotics for Good program, and we were quite amazed by the uptake and interest in robots. Robots that can positively impact the SDGs. So robots for disaster management, for agriculture, for healthcare, for disabilities, for companionship, no shortage of use cases. And we have about 55 robots coming to the summit, about 9 humanoid robots. Just to give you context, even the biggest robotics conferences in the world might have 1 or 2 humanoid robots. I mean, we have 9 of them. We're going to have the world's first humanoid robot press conference. So don't ask me how that's going to go. That's an experiment. But I think, the summit has always been there to demonstrate the potential. And if it fails, it fails. If it's great, it's great. But it sparks discussion and debate around why it was good or bad. And of course, there'll be a strong focus on artists as well. So in 2019, we brought along some amazing artists that use AI to push the limits of their performance and creativity. And of course, now with generative AI, the debate around that, it's more relevant than ever. So of course, there's issues with intellectual property and who owns art created by AI. But also, I think having artists who are actually creating amazing art using those tools, to see them do it can really help move that narrative and discussion along as well. So the event is free. If you're in Geneva, you can attend. Just sign up, come for free. If you can't come, you can follow online. So go to aiforgood.itu.int, and we're just really hoping the online audience really skyrocket this time because there's no limit to participation.
Very exciting event. I know we're helping kind of push it out to our audience. We think it's a great event. We're excited to see kind of what comes from it and continue to find ways for us to work together just to promote the cause and what you all are working on. So really appreciate you taking the time. Neil, you as well. Thanks for jumping on. I know you're kind of other side of the world right now, but appreciate you spending the time with us and learning more about or allowing us to learn more about AI for Good and all the initiatives going on there. So very excited to get this out to our audience, and thank you again both for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ryan. Really appreciate the opportunity. Neil, looking forward to meeting you in a couple of weeks.
Well, I am. And for all you people out there, we're trying to get Fred, a very accomplished drummer, to do a set as part of the AI and art cultural exhibition. So needle him on social media.
It's not going to be streamed, so you have to come up first if you want to see that. And bring earplugs.
I think we got enough phones probably in the vicinity. Maybe we'll be able to get some footage. But yeah, thank you both again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.